Okay, so today on the bench we have actually these really nice radios. This is a Penney. It's a model 6241. Actually, here's the faceplate I already have taken off for the radio. It's an AM sideband radio. It's one of those radios that uses a little bit of weird setup, how you get from AM to sideband. It has an AM sideband switch, and then once you've switched it into sideband, you would flip the other switch to select either upper or lower sideband. Customer sent this one in for restoration. Really doesn't need a lot other than basically just replacing the electrolytic capacitors and an alignment. Now this is a, what would you call it? It's a base mobile, so it's a it's a Mobase, but it actually has an AC power supply built into it. And once I get this done, I'll have the radio completely put back together. You'll see the bottom cover. It has a bottom firing speaker, but it also has a kickstand built into it and two rear rubber feet. So, you know, when the radio's setting upright, you can actually, with the kickstand up, it holds the radio up at an angle about like that. But yeah, this radio is meant to be used in either mobile or as a base station. So it has a very weird plug. Now that's not a problem if you have the cords for this radio, but yeah, if you don't have the original cords for this, good luck finding them. Now this customer's lucky. He has the AC power cord as well as the DC power cord, so he can use it both AC and DC. Now these are a little bit tricky to work on. For starters, I suggest anytime you work on one of these things, the instant you take the covers off, just do yourself a favor. Pull all the knobs off, take the faceplate off. The reason I say that is there's only two screws that actually hold the faceplate on. Now, the cover screws, as you can see that here, the cover has a screw in here, and there's another one that goes in here. So when the covers are installed, those are also holding the faceplate. But once you take the covers off, there's only one screw on either side, and the faceplate actually rocks back and forth very easily. It's very easy to break the mounting tabs on the side of the faceplate off. So anytime you take the covers off on this model radio, do yourself a favor, just pull the knobs off and remove the faceplate and set it off to the side. That way you don't break those mounting ears. It's also a little bit tricky to work on because, as you can see, since it has an AC power supply, yeah, it gets the front's fairly standard as any other radio, but the back is a little bit cramped. Yeah, you've got the power supply circuitry down in here. This is a PA module, PA meaning the power amplifier. So this is actually the driver and the final transistor. Now, the final transistors are fairly very common, and this is a 1307 final. Usually you would see a 1306 as a driver. That's not what they use in this. They use a much rarer, I guess you could say, 1902 SC1909 is the driver. But the problem with the location of this module is there's parts. This circuit board that you see on either side here, well, actually it goes the whole length here. So this is covering up a lot of that down there. And there are electrolytic capacitors underneath of this that you have to get to if you're recapping the radio. Now, at least JCPenney, when they designed the layout of the chassis, or whoever did the layout for the chassis of this, at least did have their thinking cap on. This is removable. I mean, you can't just unplug it and completely remove it from the radio. I mean, it is hardwired, but this PA module does come out. The transformer is not stuck on there, so if I flex the back, you can see the transformer is not actually attached to this. The only thing holding this in is this screw here, and then there's a little tab that actually comes down and attaches to this heatsink for this transistor down here. So you take that screw, and that screw out, and then you can lift this module up to get to the components on the underside. Just be careful when you put this back in. Make sure you see there's a plastic insulating washer there like you'd use on a transistor. Make sure you put that plastic insulating washers on there. If not, you're going to short this out. And you'll see they have even insulation board on the back side of this module, so it can't come in contact with this transformer. It needs to be isolated. There's also a piece of insulation board, you can see the red there, that runs the full length in between this heat sink and this heat sink, so that there's no metal-to-metal contact between this module and anything else in this radio. Just make sure you, like I say, that you use the insulating the transistor insulating washers on there, so that you're completely isolated. So give you a downward shot on it so you can see the inside. Layout's a little bit different than a lot of radios. A lot of your switching's actually done up here. The relays at the right front corner here. Crystal filter, where normally you'd see those up around here somewhere. It's creative. The parts are at locations. It does have, lift the camera up, there's actually 3 can covers, so there's actually 3 can. They just pop off. They're not soldered on, but there's these 3 areas here have RF shield covers on them. And this does use a few more crystals than other radios of the day. Like pretty much any radio, it has your reference oscillator for the PLL chip is a 10.24 megahertz, but it has a lot of other crystals. So there's actually 2 crystals down here, there's 2 crystals here, and there's another crystal over here. So this actually has a total of 6 crystals, where other AM sideband radios you'll see have fewer crystals than that. They just use a different mixing scheme with this. But, like I say, this radio is in really good condition. I don't think anything has ever been done to it. Even in the, back here in the PA section, you can see the coil, the adjustments for your driver and final coupling there. They still have the original wax on them. They've never been unsealed. Now, it does have a few minor problems, which I'll need to take care of, and that is our old enemy, corrosive glue. Underneath of this plastic boot that they have on this capacitor, you can see that the circuit board is black down there, and there's a diode and a resistor, and there's some other parts down there. But yeah, that hard black crunchy stuff, yeah, that's the corrosive glue. So I'm just going to have to replace that, at least the resistor and the diode, because I can see the leads are about eaten in half. And they had that on this plastic boot to, kind of hold this in place. But yeah, so it does have a little bit of corrosive glue in it, but it looks like that's about it. There's some there. I'm just trying to take a look here real quick. They've got some on the wiring here, which is no problem here. It's not touching anything that's going to corrode there. That's just holding the wires so they don't chafe. I think that's about it. Just that one spot. No, there's a little bit on the back of this heatsink right here, which, without pulling the schematic, I'm going to assume is just a voltage regulator, probably for the display. Instead of picking up voltage off of the board to drive the display, they've run probably the main power rail up to here through a voltage regulator circuit to drop the voltage down for the display and for the channel selector, which then feeds the PLL. They just move that voltage regulator circuit up here. Like I said, I'd need to pull it. Been so many years since I actually worked on one of these. I'd have to pull a schematic to be sure. But yeah, doesn't look like there's any surprises. I don't see any clipped parts. So yeah, that's all a good thing. We don't like modifications, especially having to find and undo them. So let me get to degluing, recapping. Of course, a lot of these capacitors are going to shrink in size because back when this radio was made, parts were just bigger, and our modern capacitors are a lot smaller. So, like this one, there you see there's a zip tie on it. They're holding that to this heatsink because the capacitor actually sets up off of the circuit board like that far. The modern replacement, I'm just size-wise, I may be able to fit it down on the board. Same thing goes back here. If I remember right, again, I need to check this. Well, actually, I don't even need to check the schematic. I can just look at it. Yes, those are in parallel. So these two capacitors, the main filter caps, are in parallel. I should be able to just take both of these out and stick in one large capacitor that will actually be even a larger value than both of these added together, and just stick it down on the circuit board. So I won't even need, because this is a radial leaded capacitor, they just have laid over on its side. But they were using the parts they had at the time. And like I say, capacitors were just a lot bigger back in the day. But so let me get to recapping and degluing. Once I get that done, I can do the alignment on it. I don't think I had to check the note. I might have wanted to clarify or unlocked. I can't remember. I had to take a look at the customer's note. But yeah, he didn't want a bunch of crazy stuff done to it. So yeah, a nice, pleasant restoration. Not really a lot of work to do to it. So let me get to working on it. once I get all that done, I'll show you what it looks like inside, and I'll get her put back together, and you can see what this thing actually looks like when it's together. Like I say, they're nice looking radios. It's basically just, it looks like a really big mobile, because it is. It's a lot longer just because of the AC power supply circuitry. But yeah, these are really nice radios. And if you're looking for a small base station, man, this is it. I mean, you couldn't ask for a much smaller base station radio. Really good radio to start with. They just added an AC power supply, basically stretched the case a little bit for some real estate, crammed in an AC power supply, and made it, you know, either AC or DC operable, which is really nice. So let me get to work, and I'll be back. Thought I'd just really quick show this. Got the amplifier modules loose, and I was wrong. You don't have to take that screw out. It's just these two screws that hold the amplifier module in. But did get the stuff under there, the caps over here, and I'm working in this area. And I had said, yeah, there's some glue here. Not a lot in this radio. Well, actually, yeah. They just happened to put all the glue in one place. All around here. It's just, they had the underside of this piece of plastic tubing they had on this cap that's covered with it. And yeah, this thing, the plastic tubing is disintegrating. It's sticky, and yeah, it's just, that's going bye-bye. And like I say, both of those electrolytic capacitors, this is the one that was standing up right here, and that other one in the tube that was laying down, they're both 2200 microfarad at 25 volt caps, and they were in parallel. So that would be a total of 4400 microfarads of capacitance. Well, today, of course, like I say, capacitors getting smaller. You can see the exact same size, 4700. So I can actually add capacitance, and that's a 35 volter to top. But I can add capacitance to this and only have to put one in there, you know, to replace both of these. And yeah, this had a nasty blob of solder stuck to it too. I hate touching that thing. It's just, got to go wash my hands off now. I'm all goopy. But yeah, I got to get all this glue out of here. Like I say, you can see the diode and the resistor down there. They're embedded in that stuff, and they're all corroded. And just out of curiosity, it's just more for my curiosity to see, because occasionally, and this can cause problems, when this glue gets to that point where it's almost just black, when it gets to that point, a lot of times you'll find it's not only has it become corrosive, it also has become conductive. So it will actually start to conduct electricity. Let me just set my own meter up here. I just want to see if it is. So all you got to do is just touch the glue. You know, don't touch a lead. Just touch the glue in one spot, and then touch the glue somewhere else. Nope, not seeing anything. Yeah, sometimes, and actually in the original version President Lincoln's, I've actually seen that cause problems. All those toroidal transformers. Yeah, this stuff looks to be non-conductive. It hasn't gotten to the point where it's actually conducting electricity. But anyhow, in the original versions of the, like the original President Lincoln, the President HR 2510, the 2600s, and then Realistic had a few radios that were the same design. They had a bunch of toroidal transformers back in the PA section of those radios. And of course, they pour that glue all over it, and it gets just like that, black and corrosive. In those radios, it'll actually get conductive, and I've had people send me radios, and their complaint was low output power. That's all that was wrong with the radio. I mean, it needed to have the caps changed, but the actual output power problem was that glue had become conductive, and it was shorting out those toroid transformers. You literally just clean the glue off the board, and the output power was fine. So yeah, always be aware of that stuff. That's the reasons we want to get that stuff out of here. It eats the leads off of parts, and eventually it will cause shorts that will, you know, affect whatever circuit that stuff might be bridging across. So I just thought I'd show that really quick. Yeah, I just thought I'd really quick show what she looks like after she's all cleaned up and got the new caps put in the backside here. So yeah, we had glue that just pretty much encompassed everything from this transformer around the capacitor, up under here, all around here, this cap, both of these caps, the transistor, resistor, diode, all over the place, because they had it holding that one cap down. like I say, I was able to just stick in a single cap here. So that really cleans up this area, just tidiness-wise. Excuse me. And then to get all that glue out of there, that can be a royal pain in the butt if you're going to use nothing but something like dental picks. And it can be done. It's the way I used to do it, as a matter of fact. Dental picks, tweezers, pliers, just anything to try and scraping, grabbing, pulling, twisting to get that stuff out of there. And I still resort to that. And actually, if the glue hasn't dried out really bad, a lot of times you can actually get it with a, I'll use a old nasty pair of tweezers I got over here, kind of a bench tweezers, tips are bent up. But a lot of times you can grab the glue and I'll just spin the tweezers like that in my fingers, and it'll just wrap itself around the tweezers because it's still really elasticy. But when it gets to the point where it's drying out, it's not really that hard to get off, people. A little bit of, as I frequently show, the GC Electronics Radio TV Cement Solvent, some great stuff. It's mainly acetone is the primary ingredient. There's some other solvents in there, but as soon as you open it, trust me, you'll know it's acetone because the smell on this stuff. Be sure to use this in a well-ventilated area, like when doing something like this where you're using it, not a lot, but more than you normally would. The fumes can get rather thick, and trust me, you will get lightheaded. But easiest way I found to do that is you just take a straw, a straw off of a spray can. I just stick that down in the bottle. Put your finger over the end, and then of course that holds the liquid in. And I can just bring the straw in here, and I just saturated the entire area that had the glue there. Waited about 2 minutes. I could see it starting to get a little bubbly, and it's starting to curl up because it softens it up. Kind of what I call, it rejuicifies it. Makes it juicy again instead of being rock hard. But just wait for it to soften up like that. Then I can come in with, I think dentists call these spatulas. I've sharpened the ends of these so they're really sharp on the ends. But that just allows me to get underneath of that stuff, and I can just pretty much usually just slide that across the board and just take that stuff off in sheets. And when there's a little bit of residue left over, I'll just dampen this with a little bit of that solvent, and all this is a flux brush. And these usually start off, the bristles are about that long. I trim them really short, that way they're really stiff. But, I just apply a little bit more of that solvent down there, just come in with the flux brush. You'll be surprised. It just literally, the what's left on there, the residue, you'll just brush it away, and that's what you're left with. A brand new looking circuit board with no nasty glue. No gouge marks from tools from scraping and scratching into the board. And it actually just takes less time doing it that way. Yeah, you've got about 2 minutes to wait for the glue to do its thing, or for the solvent to do its thing to the glue. But if nothing else, you could be doing something else in the radio while that's happening. And then, as it dries out, I may even come in and apply solvent again, because that stuff does evaporate really fast. But yeah, this just goes to show you can take a really nasty glue job, and in no time, it's back to, it looks like brand new. Okay, so she's pretty much ready to go here. Got all the electrolytic capacitors replaced, did the transceiver alignment, checked the customer's note, and yes, he did want the clarifier unlocked on this, so the clarifier's been unlocked. Other than that, it's a stock radio, and a good working radio. It says J.C. Penney on the front, but it's Hitachi's actually who made this. Back in the day, you had the two big ones. You had, during this time frame, the two most popular, what I call board manufacturers, was Cybernet and Uniden, but Hitachi had a lot of radios as well. Not nowhere close to as many, and they weren't as popular, but they did have several different ones, and this is one of them. So, like I say, got everything. Did a little bit more tying up on the wiring because they were kind of sparse on some of their wire ties in a few spots, so I got all that done. It's all cleaned up now. Like I said, got the glue out. There actually was a little bit more glue around this cap and a little bit down behind this capacitor here. Got that cleaned off the board. So, good working radio. The only real flaw that it had, and you'll probably see there's some scotch tape on the faceplate right now. The plastic bezel, it has an aluminum trim plate on the front. It's actually a piece of formed aluminum, actually wraps around here a little bit. When I had originally taken this faceplate off, the that piece just fell off. That's the only thing that was actually holding the faceplate or the aluminum trim plate on was the knobs. So, you know, that was another problem, was when you turn the knobs, it was grinding against the faceplate because it had come out. So I've got that glued, and actually I could probably take the tape off now. The glue will have set up by now. But so let me get the covers put back on it. Then you can actually see what this thing looks like together. Because like I say, it is kind of nice. It has the speaker. Actually, let me just grab the cover. That way I don't have to, once I get it put back together, I don't have to flip it over. I'll show you actually what the underside of it looks like. So, you know, here's the bottom cover, but it has a built-in speaker in the bottom. Has a little plastic speaker grill over it. But like I say, this is definitely, I mean, obviously it's got an AC power supply. It was meant to be used for base or mobile, but it has built-in rubber feet in the back, and it has the little bail foot on the front, so it actually stands the radio up, which is really nice, because that's the problem when you try to use a mobile radio as a base station. You know, these knobs, they're so close to your tabletop you can't get to them. Well, with the built-in kickstand, you know, it raises the radio up, so that's kind of nice. So let me get it finished putting it back together. We'll get her fired up, and you can see what she looks like all together. My God, how many times can you say one more time? The bowl. What can you say? But in any case, the skip is just starting to come in today. So yeah, I was here in Channel 6. There was a little bit on Channel 25, but that's about all there is right now. Like I say, you can... Yeah, 6 is starting to come in. Yeah, it's one of those things, give it another 10 minutes, probably all the channels will be full. But in any case, she's all back together. You can see, like I say, things in really, really nice condition. Only real cosmetic flaw I see with it is there's a little bit of a scratch that's visible behind the volume knob here, and that's very likely because that aluminum plate, when it was loose, you know, was tilted forward a little bit, and the knob scraped into it. And there's one tiny, tiny little dent right there. You can just see that little imperfection. Other than that, yeah, it doesn't get much nicer. The plastic bezel, the outside edge is in really nice shape. The covers are pristine. They're almost like brand new. Yeah, really nice radios. Like I say, they do have this really weird configuration, and again, this is not the only radio that had this kind of weird setup. That was kind of a Hitachi thing, where you have to switch between AM and sideband, and then once you're in sideband, you have to then select either lower sideband or upper sideband. You know, instead of having a rotary 3-position switch, you've got two 2-position switches. But yeah, that was kind of unique to the radios. One thing that does make these nice, and I like this on any radio, it's a tone control. Tone controls are nice because honestly, that's a very easy way to make basically a cheap noise blanker. You know, or for audio filtering, because, you know, go to a channel where there's no noise, and, you know, you can, by changing the tone, all you're doing is, and most tone controls on pretty much any CB radio, they usually consist of a capacitor. That's it. Just one cap and a resistor. It's just an RC filter network. And what you're doing is rolling off the high frequencies. You're cutting them off. So, like I say, but a lot of times, a lot of your static or your hiss, it's in the higher frequencies. So you can, you know, with the tone control, like I say, you can blank out or, you know, filter out a lot of that high-pitched static noise. So I really like, you know, personally, I like radios, you know, that have the tone control. Like I said, if you're looking at getting one of these things, be sure it has power cords. They're how would you say, rare as hen's teeth. Like I say, this customer's lucky. He has not only the DC power cord, but the AC power cord, which this is running off of right now. If you get one of these things and it doesn't have either power cord, yeah, you could be SOL. Now, DC, yeah, you could probably jury rig you could get the push on, you know, the little crimple on, you know, insulated terminals like you get at the automotive parts store. I wouldn't feel too unsafe about doing that for the DC power cord, but I would never do that with the AC cord. Those 2 pins would be too easy to get knocked out of the back and just honestly too easy for you to get electrocuted. You definitely want to use the molded plug for AC power, because the actual pins are actually recessed back in this plug, so they're not easy to touch if the cord ever does get knocked out. The other thing is, these big plugs are actually very hard to knock out. You need to physically pull these things out, because even though there's only 2 terminals connected in here, it actually has all 6 pins, and it's hard to pull out. So yeah, we don't want to see anybody get electrocuted. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, that's no problem. I'll just replace the socket. Probably not. The problem with that is that 6-pin socket on the back. If you go back in the video and look where I was, filming towards the back of the radio, that socket solders directly to the power supply board. So, you've got the steel chassis on the back of the radio, the power supply circuit board's flat up against the back of it, and the socket comes in, the pins actually go through that circuit board, and then are soldered on the outside, or inside, outside, and how you want to look at it, but edge. So, it's not like you can just take that out and slap another socket in there. You're never going to find something else that has that exact pin arrangement and spacing that would easily fit in there. You'd almost have to, I guess, make a little metal box almost to fit on the back of the radio, that would stand off the back of the radio, that you could then add a normal AC power socket, like a 2-pin power socket, and then run the wires to the circuit board. You could even actually add 2 jacks. You could add an AC socket. If you were so inclined to do something like that, you could add an AC power socket and a normal modern 3-pin DC power cord to your little box. But yeah, just be aware. Watch. Be careful. If you're buying one of these, make sure it comes with a plug. Other thing is, customer, like I say, got the microphone. I got to check the note. I think he actually said I could keep this one. I'd rather he keep it with the radio. That way, if some point in the future he ever gets rid of it, he has an original J.C. Penney microphone to keep with it. That's always a good idea. Increases the value for collectors. They like to have factory microphones with a radio. He sent 2 other microphones I need, and he wants those wired to work with this radio. Now, what do you wire it? Well, if you just bought a brand new microphone, odds are, today, odds are it'll work with this radio. This radio uses standard from the factory. So the way this thing left the factory, it uses the standard 4-pin Cobra wiring pattern. So if you get one of these radios, does come with a power cord, but did not come with a microphone. Yeah, if you've got a microphone laying around, like most of my bench cords are, it's about half and half. Like this one's wired with the 4-pin Cobra, and then I've got other microphones that I use my old Murata plug for a lot of my adapters. But like I say, if you've got a microphone wired 4-pin Cobra, that's all you need. There's no special wiring, so that's one advantage of this thing. But there you go, the J.C. Penney 6241, and actually it's the actual model number you can see there on the Sam's manual. It's actually a 68 or 681-6241. But in any case, there you go. Enjoy.